Hello, and welcome to the series of database programming in Java. So, in this series, we are going to look at how do we program Java when we have a database to store all our data. So, we are going through these 4 videos. The first is a short introduction to the database programming idea in general. It is this video. The next video is specifically about how do you do database programming in Java, what's special about Java that is different from all other object-oriented languages. The third one is the actual demonstration of programming, where I'm going to just program some code directly into IntelliJ so you can see the process. And the fourth video is a security video that's about avoiding a rather large security risk that always pops up here, and that is about how do you avoid SQL injection. So first, short introduction to what are the issues with database programming. So database programming, when we think of it from an object-oriented point of view, as we typically do because it's Java, right, is the database is just the place where we put our objects. We like to think about our objects in a more pure form, and then we store them in a database. And all this about relational modeling and all that, that's not for us as programmer to think about. And this is the point of view that I'm going to take here. So we call that persisting the object. So we take an object, we store it in a database, later we retrieve it. And we call it database persistence. And we don't do that by ignoring everything we know about databases. It's just a point of view where we start with the object. So what we need to do is to take our class structure, our model in the class diagram, and map that into a database. This is called object relational mapping, and it's very, very close to mapping a conceptual model. So it's not something I'm going to go into deep because it's pretty much the same, but there is, I would just mention one pitfall. I will mention that sometimes you're in a situation you already have a database and now you want to make a program on top of it, and then you have to go the other way, right? Take the relational model and make an object model out of it. But given a choice, this is typically not what we do because the object model tends not to be too great when we do that. Okay, let's look at this example. We have a book, an ISBN number, which is what identifies which book it is. Then it has a title and it has a year of publishing. And then it has an author. And to simplify the example, I just decided that a book has one author, even though reality isn't like that at all. The author just has a name, and that's it. The issue that I want to address here is, what if 2 authors have the same name? Because that happens. This is a real example. So author 1 and author 2. In Java, if I write this code, these 2 lines, this will be 2 different objects with the same attributes but 2 different objects. If you try to compare them with author 1 equals author 2, it's false. They're not the same. If you write it to the equals method and try to compare them then, well, depends on how you write the equals method, but probably true then, but they shouldn't be, right? Because they are not the same author. They just have the same name. If we try to put that into a database that only has, or has a table with only the name, well, that's a lot of confusion because those are just 2 identical rows and there's no way of knowing whether we talk about one Douglas Adams or the other Douglas Adams. So what we'll have to do is we have to add an artificial primary key. So the rest is just the usual mapping from ER model, right? A book has one author. An author can write many books. We have a one-to-many. We know how to deal with it. And the rest is just in there. Let's see. So the author, then the name is just a varchar because it's a string. I'm not allowing null authors, null names, because it wouldn't make sense to have an author with no name. So the interesting part is the ID. ID serial. So serial is an integer. It is an integer that if I don't fill in a value for it, it is not going to be null as usual. Instead, it's going to be the next available number, the next number that hasn't been used yet. So in practice, it's pretty much going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. Because I don't plan on ever giving it an ID. I just plan on giving it a name, and then it will have an ID automatically. The book is mapped exactly as if it was an entity. It had 3 attributes, they're mapped there, and then it had a reference, and that's mapped as a 4th. Note, as I said, serial is an integer with an extra thing. So when I reference it, the reference needs to be an integer. That's about what I want to say about object relational mapping and how in general we work with it. Now, I want to look at, in the next video, how do we actually write the Java code?